What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. Once again, we are talking about designing some characters for Blood on the Clocktower. And I guess I've made a little bit of an update to my recording setup where we have a new fancy background instead of the classic Clocktower texture. We now actually have the no rolls barred clocks room that they fill in. I don't know, it looks nice. I want to do something different. Now, recently I ran a game of my Bad Moon Rising 2 script. It is called Temple of Ront, and it didn't go according to plan. We had one big game where we had the Leech, and the Leech hosted the Chrome Boy, which actually, let me just, kill that guy. Let me put the Chrome Boy in play for a second. And the Chrome Boy's text reads, "You and the demon start knowing a player and their character. If that player dies, learn the demon." And so the downside for the evil team, if the demon is learned, then the Chrome Boy is the Leech host, so the wrong person is going to be learned. Whatever, right? But also just as the Leech in general, the Leech being learned by the Chrome Boy is not a big deal. Because they try and execute the Leech and nothing happens because they don't know it's specifically the Leech. Now, because the Chrome Boy was the Leech host, I had to give them incorrect information about the player they started knowing and their character, so I showed the organ grinder as the tea lady, and everything went kind of wrong. But there's an additional piece of information that I have not told you, and that is that we had a good gnome that was paired with the Chrome Boy, and the gnome's setup information and learning the amigo, the Chrome Boy, happened first, and then the Leech picked the Chrome Boy to be the Leech host, and I just had to be like, yeah, look, we'll send it, we'll see what happens, and it was bad. I'm becoming a gnome hater. It's just too gameable by the good team. If you have some suspicion on you, you can prove yourself good by nominating and dying to the gnome. The amigo, even if dead, can still be nominated to abuse this effect, and players were being encouraged to prove themselves to the gnome death. I really don't like that play pattern. And so it kind of muddied up this game in particular, but it did expose a few things that I think were a bit clunky about that original design. And then we played a second time where instead of the Leech we had Deadweight, which is a new team, we'll cover that in a second. And then they just got caught in like a perfect mechanical pin where there was just like no other circumstances that they could have been evil. Because a cannibal hucked a guest, specifically the demon. There was no way they could receive this information, and then a gambler gambled them as the Leech and died, and there was no other way that they could die because dead weight. And they're like, well, if I had died and it was Crypt Keeper because we had somebody else claiming to be dead, then they would know. They wouldn't have been announced that they were dead, and it kind of proved everything that this was the demon and specifically not the Leech, and the game fell apart. And so I'm like, what do I got to do to change things up? What do I gotta do, right? So here is both the list of old characters and some of the new ones. I'm gonna kind of run through them all and talk about why stuff worked and why it didn't. Starting with the Chrome Boy. The Chrome Boy is my attempt at revitalizing the Choir Boy's design, where the Choir Boy adds the king into play, and then if the king dies, the Choir Boy learns the demon. And then the king has the line of text where the demon knows who the king is. And so the Chrome Boy is trying to do those two things in one, where it's like the Chrome Boy and the demon start knowing a player and their character. Kind of like the grandmother, because this is a BMR2. The grandmother effect felt like it was a home, and then if that player dies, learn the demon. It's kind of gameable while we're executing them. I could just change it so that if they die at night, that could be fine. But I just figured it's too powerful. It dominates too much of the conversation, I think. Too much resolves around what the Chrome Boy is able to accomplish. And so I'm like, all right, let's cut it. Next is the Herbalist. The Herbalist is a keep. I think the Herbalist is great because the Herbalist lets a Shabaloth exist or a Shabaloth be simulated. The Professor is not powerful enough to simulate a Shabaloth, and so the Shabaloth is kind of instantly confirmable. And the Herbalist is trying to do what the Pacifist does, but instead with Resurrections, which allows the Shabaloth to be a bit harder to solve for, which is one of the main goals on writing the script originally, and I think it's a success, so I'm happy to keep the Herbalist. Next is the Physicist. The physicist is a character that I really like, but I realize has an inherent problem. It says you start knowing if there are more evil players sitting on even or odd numbered seats, the demon seat wins ties, which is great because it means the information is not arbitrary. But it's horrible because if it's a 7-player game and there's one demon and one minion, and if each of them is on either, so if the demon's on even and the minion is on odd, then you learn even and you go, well, the demon is in 50% of these players, right? It just immediately cuts down in half. Which is just like the best possible artist guess most of the time, which is kind of brutal. You also have to guess, are both of them sitting on the same parity of seat, or, you know, are they equally spread out? We had a game where the physicist popped and we had three minions or 2 minions and an evil traveler that were all on even numbered seats, and the leech host were on an odd numbered seat, and the physicist is like, we should be killing people on even numbered seats because I know there's evil people there, but also it doesn't solve the game. So I am really unsure as to just how good the physicist is, if it's just like a complete mislead most of the time, or if it's just insanely powerful. So we're gonna retire him for now. I think it fits better on like a sex and violence type script rather than a Batman Rising type script. Anyway, it was just a character that I had recently designed and thought was doing good, and I wanted to have some kind of starting information on the script, because, you know, BMR does have the grandmother, and I wanted to have a little something, you know, that option. But instead, the physicist is getting retired. That's it, physics, you're out. Next is the Huckster. Now, the Huckster is a character I created for the Codename script because I wanted more public guessing characters, because you have the Gossip, the Juggler, the Al-Sahir, and I wanted a secret fourth option, which became the Huckster, where it's guess 2 people as a character type, and then you learn how many are correct. Now, you can't guess the same character type more than once, which is what, you know, I don't know, it's kind of like cost. In the game where the leech was mechanically solvable, we had the Huckster guess 2 players as the demon and got a 1. And they're like, well, the other guy is claiming to be dead, and we kind of trust that he's an outsider, so I believe that is the demon, which is kind of rough, that they just happened to hit. But guessing people as the demon and guessing people as townsfolk, like getting a townsfolk 2 or a townsfolk 0, is really powerful, and I think that perhaps the Huckster should get retired. I think it's fun generally. I just think maybe it's too powerful for the script where there isn't really that much misinformation. And then let's skip these 2 townsfolk and talk about the other 3 characters really quick, because we'll come back to them. First is the Imitator, our outsider, which is the pixie with downside. You start knowing 1 in-play character. Even if dead, you are mad that you are that character, or that character dies tonight. So we had a game where the Imitator saw the Gambler, and then the Imitator has to claim to be the Gambler, and then the Imitator died at night to the demon attacking them, but the Imitator had talked to the real Gambler, and the real Gambler had claimed a not Gambler character. And the Imitator was like, well, I gambled you as this thing that you told me you were, and you weren't, and now I have died. So, and they create like a really funny dialogue, because the real Gambler goes, I'm very confident you were just the Imitator. But the Imitator is like, well, I have to hold up the charade or the real Gambler dies. And I really like how that works. I think it works nicely on the script as well. And then we have the Crypt Keeper and Deadweight. So this is the main heavy lifting that is added to make it a interesting addition, you know, to the BMR style scripts. And they both overlap a little bit, but there is a significant difference between them when it comes to mechanical game solving. So let's start with the Crypt Keeper. Players that die at night are told privately and register alive. If a dead player was executed today, choose someone to die tonight. So basically, let's say you were killed by the demon. During the day, you would wake up and be like, hey, no one died last night. You have 3 minutes to discuss that. But you, who died, would be woken up and go, you learn that you are now dead. And they go, oh no. Right, so if you die, you learn privately. And then if a player who is dead, but registers alive, is executed, then the Crypt Keeper will get to kill an additional player. And Deadweight is similar, except only the players that Deadweight kill are told privately and register alive. So each night Asterix choose a player, they die, are told privately and register alive. If no one died today, choose twice. So basically, who has died will be obfuscated, and then the evil team can bluff as being dead, which the Crypt Keeper and the Deadweight both have an additional downside if you execute a player who is actually, registering alive but is dead, to help hide the evil team and help hide the actual number of kills in the game, which is, I think, very interesting. It adds an extra layer to solve when it comes to that Bad Moon Rising style puzzle. Now, let's get to our two new townsfolk. The first one is the Rat King. I actually really like the Rat King as a design here. So it reads, executed townsfolk players learn you are the Rat King. So if you're killing townsfolk, you are at least upside getting to build the trust with them. And then the Rat King speaks to all the dead players that we have killed them. We're not the demon, and gets to build trust and kind of, build the team. However, outsiders will not learn the Rat King. Minions will not learn the Rat King. And demons will not learn the Rat King. And so, when you are executed, and the Rat King comes up to you and goes, hey, what's going on? Do you trust me? And they go, why the fuck? Then the Rat King goes, and what were you claiming again? And then that gives them, the ability to get a really strong social read. The Rat King might be a little bit too powerful, because it's tough for the evil team to bluff. However, if the Rat King is poisoned, no one would ever learn that they are the Rat King. So the evil team could bluff that they are the leech-hosted Rat King, or they've been made puzzle drunk, or something like that. Like, it's not impossible to pull it off. But if it does activate, it is kind of strong. But it's also the dead players help confirm you the alive Rat King, which is interesting. And we're going to get maybe there's an extra step here with the Crypt Keeper that we haven't learned yet, which we'll get to in a minute. And I'm interested to see how that also is going to interact with the Rat King. But let's go to the Bellboy. Each night Asterix choose a number of steps. Good players this distance from you are safe from the demon. Now, I have actually changed this to be cannot die at night, and we'll see that in a second. But I really like the idea of the Bellboy chooses a room number, and then the people in that room are safe. Which is kind of funny. I like that thematically. But the way it's separate to the Innkeeper picks two people, the Bellboy has less control of the two people they pick. So they might just pick a number that covers for one person in particular that they think should be protected, and then they'll get one extra person for free, basically. Or if they're really lucky, they can line things up. But there might be people that are dead already or have been executed, and it's hard to pick a number that actually hits two players. So I think that there's interesting play space to discover with the Bellboy and how you're going to put it together. But now, let's have a look at selecting our scripter. Let's have a look at the full Temple of Rot. The full Temple of Rot. So, our goal was to create Bad Moon Rising 2, and then this is a small update in the right direction that I think to help create this script work. So we picked our little chunk of Bad Moon Rising characters that we wanted to reprise in the sequel, which is Professor Tea Lady, Gossip, Gambler, Fool, Chambermaid. And then other things that we picked that fit really nicely is Acrobat, which doesn't have a home script yet, and Acrobat works really well on this script, because it can find somebody puzzle drunk, it can find an organ grinder who is self-drunking, it can find the leech host, and it can find vigor mortis poisoning, which I really like how that works. So if they do find something and do die, it tells them something actually relevant about the game. Whereas if they pick someone that was Sailor picked, or they pick someone that was Innkeeper picked, it's not as relevant. It's not as helpful to the good team to be solving. So I do actually really like the Acrobat here. Then we have the Oracle. So the Oracle is going to help you tell if there is any dead evil players, but also if there's any evil players bluffing dead. Because if the Oracle has a 0 and there's a player that you think is evil is claiming to be dead, the Oracle will know the difference. And then the Cannibal, I think the Cannibal is a fantastic Bad Moon Rising character. You get upside on all the executions, and also you can soft confirm a bunch of people. It's exactly the kind of information that a Bad Moon Rising script wants on it, and I like that. You can see we've got the Bellboy text updates. We cannot die tonight. We have the Rat King. We have the Herbalist. These are my 3 new townsfolk. Every custom script that I do like this, with a bunch of my homebrew stuff on it, I like to do kind of a 30-70, where it's less than 30% brand new characters for people to learn, and then mostly existing known characters. So it's not so hard for people to pick up and play. This one, we only have 3, 4, 5, 6 new characters to learn. And I think it's enough to create a whole new interesting thing. And so I'm excited about that. Let's see, we kind of covered all of our townsfolk. So we have the Moonchild, where when the Moonchild dies, which might not be obvious because it might be a private death, they have to publicly choose an alive player, but it might be someone registering as alive. Nice upside, right? And if they were a good player, they die. Which I like more than the Klutz here. The Klutz would also be funny, but I like the Moonchild here. We have the Puzzle Master, so we have some source of misinformation, but the Puzzle Master and the Acrobat have a really nice synergy, and that's why I have the Puzzle Master. We have the Plague Doctor, so if the Plague Doctor dies, I can gain a Crypt Keeper ability late in the game, which can be really cool, or I can gain an Organ Grinder ability late in the game, or I can gain a Devil's Advocate ability late in the game. I really like how the Plague Doctor interacts here. Then we have the Imitator, which is really good, both with its cost of somebody dying at night, and also creating a duplication in using its madness, and just a little bit of noise and confusion when it comes to narrative. And we have the Devil's Advocate, because we need to double for the Tea Lady and the Fool and the Leech, so that sometimes players will not die and be executed, but there's a couple of reasons why. We have the Godfather, because we want some extra deaths at night, but also having the ability to modify the outside account positively when none of the demons can do that, I think is also of value. We have the Organ Grinder. Now, the Organ Grinder is special here. Now, if you remember, I told you about Crypt Keeper, and I told you about Deadweight, and how that when somebody dies under their special conditions, they will register alive, and they will be told privately that they have died. I have now figured out how to add jinxes, and I'm using this, making a long list of them. The Crypt Keeper and the Organ Grinder, and the Deadweight and the Organ Grinder have a special jinx where they're both identical, but if the Organ Grinder and the Crypt Keeper are in play together, sober and alive, executees are not announced and are instead told privately. Now, in a 7-player game, when you go, yes, this Deadweight and Organ Grinder is a bit game solving, a little bit. In 10 players, where you have 2 minions, and you could have either Crypt Keeper Organ Grinder or Organ Grinder Deadweight, I think is interesting, and gives a little bit more of a game solve. A little bit more of a game solve. And so I'd like that the Organ Grinder gains power if these extra characters are in play. Which I think is cool. I think there should be more jinxes there instead of like, damn, let's stop the game from ending if these 2 things exist, or the game instantly ends if these 2 things exist. These 2 characters cannot exist on the same script. Then instead having, if these 2 characters exist, here is an extra thing, which I kind of like. Because in theory, deaths at night are secret, because you don't know who the demon's going to pick. It's not announced. And then it becoming extra private by not being announced by the storyteller is the Deadweight's ability. Executions, you don't know who is going to be executed because the votes are obfuscated. And so when the nominations and execution phase ends, people don't know reliably who's going to be executed. And for that to be then becoming a private death, especially because you have something like the Cannibal that can cover for that, I think is really interesting. And I like how it works quite a lot. We could also have put Undertaker on here, but I think having the Cannibal is enough. I don't know that I would want both. If I could literally just add an extra townsfolk and put the Undertaker on here. And then that is our minions. And we have these additional jinxes with the Crypt Keeper. So the Crypt Keeper says that the players register alive, and then this clash is the same for dead weight. It's just basically always, at all times, the Crypt Keeper and the Oracle see players registering alive as dead. So if someone is like, oh my god, I have died at night, I was told privately, but I'm registering as alive, how is the professor supposed to pick them if they don't have the shroud? And their ability would literally never work in the game, alright? So instead, the professor sees players that claim to be dead and has to make a choice as to, is this person truthfully a townsfolk? They could be an imitator, or they're just an evil player that's bluffing instead. Are they truly dead before I use my ability? I think that is an extra layer of intrigue. The Oracle is the same, except the Oracle gets the upside of the Oracle know truly which evil players are dead, and it will know if there's any evil players bluffing as dead. If they're like really confident that there is a player that they think is evil, and they go to 0, then they're like, well, you are not dead, but you are actually alive. Which I think is interesting. And I think that's cool. Because the are told privately and register alive should be a singular keyword, but we don't have language in Blood on the Clocktower that explains exactly this phenomenon, where it's like, you are dead, you do not have an ability, however, you can still nominate, you can still vote freely, you do not spend a dead vote when you vote, right? And so, register alive was the closest, bestest thing, and I think it does okay, but it means that characters like the Professor and the Oracle need a little explanation as to how they're supposed to interact with this phenomenon, which is fine. And I actually am very excited to run this script a little bit more because I feel like we're heading in the right direction. And, you know, the core thing behind all game design is you make something, it sucks. You fix things, it gets a little better. You test it, it still sucks, but it's a little better. And you kind of repeat constantly until you get to a step you go, well, actually, this is kind of good. And then, you know, you iterate and you iterate and you iterate, and then you go, actually, this is kind of a banger. And I think this is heading in the right direction. And I'm excited to see, you know, if there's going to be more improvements, if there's a little bit more that we can do, or if this is just perfect. And I'm curious to hear what you think. Get in the comments. Tell me which of these homebrew characters you think would be really fun, or you think are a cool concept, or if you have any suggestions of characters that you think would work nicely in here, either, you know, homebrew or official, because I want to make more stuff that plays like Bad Moon Rising. I think I'm heading in the right direction, and maybe with your help we can figure that out. So stick around. Up on the screen, I'm going to put the whole playlist of all the Blood on the Clocktower videos. In here is going to have the original playthroughs of the first attempt at the script, also the script building video for the first attempt at the script. If you want to go and check that out and see kind of where I started and the ideas that I had at the very beginning, but also just like all of the Clocktower, you know, playthrough stuff. So, you know, if any of that catches your interest, go and check it out. And it means that if I have played this script since this video is live, it'll be up there and it will be in the playlist for you to find, as well as a recommended video, which will probably also be Clocktower. There's like 300 Clocktower videos on this channel, and also the subscribe button. If you're excited to see more Clocktower content coming out of this channel, then you got to click that button. You got to stick around, and the algorithm gods will deliver upon to ye some extra special homebrew content. So stick around and get locked in, and hopefully we'll see you in the next